Alright, welcome to Josefa Camejo International Airport in Paraguay, Venezuela. We are taking a flight today to Aruba. Alright, let's turn the fuel on. Mixture is rich, carb heat's cold, rotating beacon on, master switch on, there's no fuel pump, throttle open 1/2 inch. Alright, prime the airplane. 1, 2, 3 shots of prime. Alright, hand on the throttle. Engine started, back to both of the magnetos. Throttle to 1000 RPM, check the oil pressure. So you might wonder, why do you put on the rotating beacon before you turn on the master switch? And the reason is because you want to let those two gentlemen over there know that you're about to start your airplane, and you want to let everybody know who's on the ramp. And you do that by, if you turn the rotating beacon on before you turn the master switch on, when you turn the master on, then that starts the light up. And hopefully gets the attention of everybody that is in the vicinity of your airplane that you're about to start the engine. Let's get the altimeter here. 29901, and that actually is about correct for what I have from ForeFlight. I want to lean the mixture a little bit for taxi. I want to depart to the north. Okay, so we're on a 9er via Alpha. I don't have a taxi. I don't have a chart for this field. So I'm trying to explain a few of the things that I do. Let's release the parking brake and get rolling here. Alright, once we straighten out, we're going to test the brakes. The brakes are working. The reason you always want to test the brakes at the beginning of your taxi is, if they're not working, you want to know right away. I mean, you've got, you know, a pretty dangerous propeller out there. And the one thing you don't want to be doing is taxiing around, moving around, and not be able to stop. Would you ever expect your brakes to fail? No, but it's possible. So you always want to test your brakes at the start of your taxi roll. I don't see anything coming down the taxiway. This must be taxiway Alpha. You always want to also check at every intersection, just like in a car. Check and see whether there's anything on the taxiway. The reason you lean the mixture for taxi is to keep the spark plugs from getting fouled from running too rich on the ground. And as I said, I don't have a taxiway diagram for this airport or an airport diagram, but I do have the 3D vision or the 3D view from ForeFlight. So I was able to look at that and get an idea of where the taxiways go. About a 10,000 foot runway, so conceivably I'm going to have plenty of room, and of course I'm going to be right now bouncing over some grass, which in real life is presumably not there, but and so now we're coming to the end of our taxi. You want to back out of the throttle early and let the plane slow down. You don't want to be using your brakes a whole lot when you taxi. Alright, so we're at the end of runway 9. Throttle to 1000 RPM. Let's put on the parking brake. Just keeps you from creeping up if you're kind of thinking about other things and not paying attention to the brake pressure and keeping your feet, you know, firmly on the brakes. So flight control is free and correct, so it's up on that side. As you can see, I've got the yoke full right, down on that side, down on that, excuse me, up on that side, yoke full left, down on that side. So those are both correct. Let's check the flaps. Flaps all the way down on that side, all the way down on that side. Put the flaps all the way up. All the way up on that side, all the way up on that side. Let's check the elevator. Okay. Flight controls are free and correct. You see a lot of people, even in real, you know, mostly in real aircraft on YouTube, they will check their flight controls are free, but they don't check whether they're correct or not. And that's very important, because they could be free, but rigged backwards, which isn't going to do you any good. So throttle to 1700. Left magneto, you got a little drop. Back to both. Right magneto, got a little drop. Back to both. Carb heat. See, I had it set exactly at 1700. Now it's about 1625-ish. So I know I got a good carb heat drop. Back to 1700. Alright. Oil pressure is good. Suction is good for the gyro instruments. Come back to 1000 RPM. I'll do a throttle idle check, which means just literally pull the throttle all the way out and listen to the engine. Should run smoothly. And it does. Alright, so okay, excuse me if you just heard me cough. I got a little bit of a cough going on. Alright, throttle to 1000 RPM. Everything is set. Actually, that's not true. Alright, taxi light on. Nav and strobe lights on. Let's set our trim. Find this airplane likes a bit more nose-up trim than you might think. Transponder squawk altitude. So, transponder is set. Trim is set. Lights are on. Last thing I'll do before we take off is enrich in the mixture. Carb heat is cold, so we're good to go. Request our takeoff clearance. got our takeoff clearance. So the one thing you want to do is when you call for takeoff clearance, you want to be ready. You don't want to be, you know, calling for takeoff clearance, getting the clearance, and then checking your radios and checking all that stuff. You want to be ready to rumble. Alright, mixtures rich, carb heat is cold. Got to acknowledge that call from the tower. The other thing you want to do is, as you're approaching the runway, you want to check and make sure there's nothing coming down final, because you have really poor visibility behind you in an airplane, and you know, if there's something coming down final about to land on top of you, you prefer to know it before you get out on the runway. Okay, so runway 09, heading indicator is 090, so I know I'm on the correct runway. Alright, mixture's rich, carb heat's cold. Power coming in. Power is set. Engine instruments are in the green. Airspeed is alive. 65. And basically this airplane just took off on its own. I didn't really pull it off the ground. And you want to rotate about 65, you want to climb at about 75, and if you've got the airplane properly trimmed, it'll climb at that 75 knots. And you see that right here. I'm climbing right at 75 knots. My hand is not on the throttle, or not on the yoke right now. I'm literally, the airplane's just flying itself. Alright, so let's see here. On course heading is 031. So we are more than 400 feet above the ground, so you don't want to start any kind of turn until you're at least 400 feet above the ground. It's just a general rule. 030 is the on course heading I'm looking for. That 400 foot rule basically comes from instrument flight, but it's a good practice to make sure you're up and away from the ground before you start horsing around. Okay, airspeed's good, cruise climb. Simulator before taking off, so I'm just going to have to live with that and fly it straight VFR. No charts or electronic flight bag. So, no big deal. Getting a good rate of climb. Almost 1,000 feet a minute. I think this is about a half-hour flight, so I was thinking 3,500 feet would be good for cruise. elevation checks. 29088. I'm sort of tempted to go up to 5500 just because we're going across water. And I don't believe that we were to lose an engine at 3500 that we would be real good in terms of getting across the water. So I'm going to keep going up to 55, start leading the engine a little bit. Meaning it should get you a little bit more power. Stretch the limits of my engine knowledge, but the reason leaning the mixture gives you more power at higher altitude is because as you increase in altitude, the level of oxygen in the atmosphere decreases. So there's more fuel in that fuel-air mixture that is combusting in the engine. And by leaning, what we mean is we're actually reducing that red knob right there. We're actually reducing, see, it's your mixture. So what mixture are we talking about? We're talking about the mixture of fuel and oxygen. Now obviously I have at least no direct ability to control the amount of oxygen going into the engine. I can by increasing or decreasing my altitude, but I can affect the amount of fuel going into the engine, and I can do that by leaning the mixture, which means it's less fuel. Leaner is less fuel, and it just burns more efficiently. As I'm leaning this out, which you can't see me doing, but I'm just pulling this mixture back, and you see that you see the RPM go up, right? So basically you just keep leaning until that RPM drops, which it just did, and then push the mixture knob in just a little bit, and that way you've got max power. I mean, there's more to it. There's more, you know, kind of theory behind it, and depending on what kind of engine and what kind of instrumentation you've got, you can be more precise about how you lean. You know, but in a 110 horsepower engine like we've got in the 152, basically you just want max power. You're not really worried about, you know, rich at peak, lean at peak, 50 degrees, rich at peak, etc., etc. All this stuff you can get into if you've got an EGT, which is an exhaust gas temperature. Instrument, but now I'm really kind of rambling. So we're coming up on our cruise altitude, 500. I'll put the nose down a little bit. As you level off, you can hear actually the RPM increases in the engine. Power back to about 2400. Just try to get the plane trimmed. Hands off. So there we go, that's hands off. Flight at 5,500 feet, pretty level. Let's take a look at the RPM. Push that up until it's exactly at 2400. And the reason I always say when I'm talking about engine RPM numbers, I always say about 2400, about 2200, etc. But I'm actually pretty precise about it. And the reason is you want to know if that value changes. And you're not going to know if that, you're not going to know if that value changes if your setting is about. So you want it exact, like it is there. That way, if these Continental engines in the 150s and the 152s are pretty well known for producing carburetor ice, and the first indication you're going to get of carburetor ice is a drop in RPM. And carburetor ice can ruin your day. It can actually starve airflow in the engine and cause the engine to stop, which is not good. So if you've got a precise value set for your engine RPM, and that RPM number drops, then it's going to give you an indication that maybe you need to be paying attention to what your engine's doing. So I've been yapping a lot about procedures and what I do and why I do it. Hopefully something is of interest to somebody. This is Venezuela, and that right off our nose out there is Aruba, and I'm glad actually that I picked 5,500 feet. As you can see that distance, about, from what I measured on ForeFlight, about 12.5 nautical miles of open water, and that extra 2,000 feet between 3,500 and 5,500 feet might make a difference for you if you lose your engine, or if you have any sort of, reduction in power in your engine over that open body of water. So 030, 030, about 45 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit. That is the very popular tourist destination of Aruba. So what I'm doing is this trip is I'm going from Maracaibo in Venezuela, which is the last place that my girlfriend lived in Venezuela before she moved to the United States. And she used to fly from Maracaibo to Aruba quite often. About a 2-hour flight in a 172. Maracaibo is back that way somewhere. And so I'm doing this flight, or this trip rather, from Maracaibo out to kind of along the coast of Venezuela, Aruba, Curacao, Bonaire, and then along the coast of Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago, and then up the island chain of the Caribbean, the Antilles chain, Grenada, St. Lucia, Dominica, Martinique, out to Bermuda, to Barbados, Guadeloupe, etc., all the way up to St. Martin. So I'm basically island hopping from Venezuela to St. Martin in the 152. And it just should be a fun way to enjoy the gorgeous scenery of Microsoft Flight Simulator. I mean, I don't know, maybe don't think so, but I think this is just gorgeous, and it's really a lot of fun. I mean, the fact that this is stock scenery from a flight simulator is just amazing to me. I'm doing it with live weather and live traffic, which some people in Microsoft Flight Simulator seem to be having problems with. For me, it seems pretty much correct. I checked the altimeter out in Aruba before I took off, and it was 2988, and that's what they gave me when I requested flight following. So seems pretty accurate. Over the frequency, listen for a few seconds before you broadcast. Make sure you're not interrupting anybody. So alright, so if you figure we're about closing in on 10 miles south of the airport, about 10 miles out, we're going 90-ish miles an hour. So you figure a mile and a half a minute, so 10 miles is going to take you 7 minutes. So we've got 7 minutes to lose 5,500 feet. So we should probably start descending. Even though actually what I want to do is, the whole point of getting a little extra altitude to cross this water is to make sure you've got a shot of getting to land if the engine quits. So I'm going to stay up here a little bit longer, and I'll just make a faster descent, or a steeper descent, as we get closer. Try to fly these flights as realistically as possible, and obviously in a simulator it doesn't really make much difference if the engine were to quit and you had to ditch the water, but I guarantee you in real life, if you were making this flight, that would be a consideration for you. It would be something you'd be thinking about. Flying over open water in a single engine airplane, there's no two ways about it. You're going to be considering, what are my options, what are my chances, and I'll start reducing power here a little bit. So I do want to start going down a little. So pull the power back about 100 RPM. Some altitude. Airport should be approximately right off our nose. I don't know exactly where it is. We'll find out as we get closer. We'll see it, I'm sure. Checking on the map here. So probably about 2/3 of the way. Or 1/3, I guess you could say. This left end of the island. Side of the island. About 10 miles out, give or take, so let's call them and ask for when we want to land. So left traffic runway 11. My guess is they're not going to stick to that. Left traffic for 11 would mean overflying the field. In other words, flying like the runway's right here, overflying it to the side of the island, and then making a turn down here, coming back towards this direction, and landing that way. My guess is I'm going to get closer to land. They're just going to tell me they're to land. Just, I don't know. Not exactly realistic. And so much for my measurements of 12 nautical miles. She said I was 14 miles south of the field when I called her. Yeah, it looks more like about 20 miles across this water, actually. Another picture. That's the airport pretty much right ahead of us. And yeah, again, descent considerations. I mean, in real life, I might not be as eager to get down. Oil pressure, oil temperature, good. Fuel's good. and that's gonna drop your RPM even more. Anytime you're outside of that green arc on the throttle, on the RPM in this airplane, you want to have the carb heat on. So I'm gonna play it extra safe and put it on right here. JetBlue just called in. She cleared him for the approach. Hopefully she's going to let him get in ahead of me. I hope she does let me go across the field and loop back around and give Mr. JetBlue his landing clearance, because I don't want to have to worry about an Airbus crawling up my butt while I'm trying to land. Look at that. A rainbow. How cool is that? And she just cleared me to land, so I don't know where that Airbus is. Put in a notch of flaps here in the white arc. So she just called him to land behind me. So I'm going to make a short approach here. Short and steep. Not paying nearly as much attention to my landing as I should be. Alright, mixture ridge, carb heat is on, flaps are set. Oh, see, he's right there. So who does she tell to go around? I'm gonna make that decision myself. Okay, so positive rate of climb. I'm gonna flaps. And she tells him to go around when he's 10 feet off the ground. So this has turned into kind of a mess. I mean, this isn't a very realistic situation. But I tried to handle it as again as I would have in real life. The one thing I forgot to do was to put in the carb heat for my go around. That carb heat right there should be the first thing that goes in when I need to make her go around this airplane, because you need that engine power to go around. I'm going to drop the power here. I'm way high. Drop the power to 1500. The good thing is I've got a good headwind coming at me, about a 14 knot headwind. So I shouldn't have any problem getting down and making a good approach. But so when I saw him visually off my left wing, I mean, at that point I'm not going to wait for the tower to tell me what I should and shouldn't do. You've got a potential collision, you know, I'm gonna make that call myself. Alright, so mixture's rich, carb heat's on, flaps are set. You're right on glide slope. Catching a little bit of a sprinkle. You're also catching a little bit of a crosswind. Airspeed's okay. Should be getting a little bit of crosswind out of the right. I just remembered the taxiway is about halfway down the runway, so I'm going to put in the power a little bit. And just fly down the runway here a little bit. And you would actually do this in real life. At least I would. You don't have to taxi for a year and a half once you hit the ground. Pretty terrible landing. So she tells me exit runway enabled, doesn't tell me which way. So I'm going to put the carb heat in. There we go. So the reason I put the carb heat in is because they call carb heat alternate air for a reason. It opens up a little panel to the engine and lets let some unfiltered air. Let some unfiltered air into the engine. And when I say unfiltered, I mean unfiltered. So what can happen is you can get rocks, dirt, crap into your engine when you've got the carbine on. You want to make sure you cross that line before you stop and talk to ground. You want to be clear of the runway. Lean the mixture a little bit for taxi. Alright. And of course, General Aviation parking is on the other side. She told me to cross the runway and park over there, which I'm not going to do. Only because it's going to take 15 minutes to get over there and park somewhere, which I just don't feel like doing right now. So I'm going to take the liberty of just parking right here, which is of course something you would not ever normally do. How about this? I'll park right next to this TBM over here. It's good enough for him, it's good enough for me, right? Okay. Alright. Mixture to idle cutoff. Throttle is idle. The reason that mixture cutoff shuts the engine down is because there's no more fuel going to the engine. Alright, so flaps are up, carb heat is cold. Let's turn all the lights off. Let's turn the magnetos off. And let's turn the batteries off. And that is all she wrote. 34 minutes and 1 second of flight time. That was kind of a fun flight and a neat approach. The rainbow is really cool and kind of an interesting little approach there with the JetBlue plane coming in, but that was fun. That was neat. Talk to you later.